Okay, there we go. Okay, good. Maybe I'll get it right this time. Hi, Peter.
Hello.
Hi, Sherry. Nice to see your name. Okay, Pat's here, so I'm going to mute myself.
Hey, sports fans, how you doing?
I have a Ram fan in the house.
Ah,
Yep. Kind of a dual family.
well, I've got Liccardo on. I'm trying to mute it, but it won't let me turn my volume down all the way. He's currently working on the. He's got a budget, a community budget meeting where he's talking about the budget for 2022-23. Lyndon's here, so we may lead off with Lyndon, if you don't mind, Lyndon, while Sam. But let's a few minutes yet till we start. Huh.
Lyndon, do you need to use our screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. So Pat, if we want to start with Lyndon, I can give her co-host.
Yeah, you can set her up now so we can do the transition pretty quickly.
Okay.
I want to take a few minutes, just make a couple of comments. And it's not 7 o'clock yet, so we'll hang tight for a couple minutes, chat amongst yourselves or whatever.
So this is for the entire District 8, not just one neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you for having this meeting. I want to also throw my support to the foot and bicycle patrols. And I think they could be particularly helpful in neighborhoods that are adjacent to large that are moving anytime soon.
I'm just trying to see if I can shut my volume off and just keep an eye on Sam, but it doesn't want to let me do it. So I guess I'll leave the meeting and he'll show up when he shows up.
$1,000 each to house them, and the ongoing cost is going to be $500 a year.
Yeah, sounds like they're having pretty long budget sessions.
Yeah, he asked people to try and stick to 2 minutes or less in their comments, and you know how people are. They don't want to do that.
Well, he's pretty good about saying thank you.
Yeah, he is.
Is it a in-person meeting or is it?
No, it's a Zoom meeting.
Oh, okay.
I'd hate having to leave, so because I'd like to know where he is in terms of ready to do things. So people are wandering in.
Pat,
Yeah.
once you welcome people, will you be able to turn off your microphone and then you could do both?
You're a genius. I do have that power.
I'm like a rocket scientist in that respect, you know.
Yeah. Good idea. So I will do that. I want to start by saying that at the steering committee level, we're talking about moving the mayor and supervisorial forum out from March into April. When we planned it for March, the hope was that the virus would have abated enough that people would be comfortable getting together. And so, John, I haven't told you this because we just had a discussion about it last night. We're looking at pulling VTA into a March 2nd, which is a Wednesday meeting, general meeting, because they meet on the first Thursday of the month. The board meeting is then, and it's more convenient for them to be in on a Wednesday. So we're looking at doing that, and then moving the mayor and supervisorial forum out to the second Thursday in April, because again, 2 of the candidates are on the VTA board, which meets on the first Thursday. So I will be sending something about that out probably Monday, soon as I confirm availability with the mayoral candidates and see what we can do about lining up the supervisors. So that I wanted to get that on the radar screen. We'll get that posted on the website as soon as we staple down what dates we're gonna hold the events on. So that's my initial comments, and I will mute myself so that I can log back into Sam. And Lyndon, I never remember how to pronounce your last name. Is it Sky or?
No, it's Shay.
Shay. Well, why don't you spell it S-H-E-A? It would make my life a lot easier, and everybody should exist to make my life easy. All right, Lyndon.
Yeah, it'd make my life a lot easier too,
I
but
bet.
it's just so interesting.
It is. So Lyndon Shea from the City of San Jose Environmental Services Department is here to give us a quick update on recycling effectively and efficiently. So thank you, Lyndon.
Thank you. Did I hit the right screen? Do you see my opening slide that says San Jose Recycles Clean? Oh, good. Okay. So yeah, I'm from the Environmental Services Department, and currently, or these days, I work in the communications division, and my job is to help people figure out how to recycle clean. And this is important for a variety of reasons right now. As always, it's good for the environment because we save resources and reduce pollution, and we reduce greenhouse gases, and we also save landfill space. Well, we don't want to have to site another landfill, so the longer we can keep it going, the better. And so there's numerous California laws that apply to this. There's some local ordinances that apply. We put together a zero waste goal back in 2007 to achieve 90% diversion by 2022. And we haven't reached that yet, but we're working on it. But the main challenge we have right now is that the recycling markets have changed. The materials that we've been sending across the Pacific to countries like China have not been very pure. They've been dirty, contaminated. They've got a bunch of junk in them. And so China finally cracked down, maybe 4 or 5 years ago with a new policy they're calling the China Sword. And they don't want us to send the materials that aren't, really clean. And so that affects us because having clean materials starts with what we put in our recycling carts. So we're going to talk about what that means. So first, to make sure we're all on the same page, these are the different carts that people have. I don't know where to. So on the left side is all the single family carts. So you would have the gray bin with the blue top. That's usually the biggest one for the recycling. Most people have the 32-gallon black garbage cart, but it also comes in 64 and 96-gallon sizes. Most people put their yard trimmings loose in the street, but some people subscribe to the green yard trimmings bin as well. I think that's like $5.60 a month. If you live in a multifamily situation, your recycling cart might be a pure blue one, sort of like the one for single family. If you're in a smaller complex, if you're in a larger complex, you'll have this white bin for recycling, and you'll have the green bin for garbage. And if you find consistently that you've got too much garbage to put in your garbage cart, and we found that some people seem to be tempted to take care of that problem by putting the extra garbage in their recycling cart, then we want to really encourage people to go ahead and request a larger garbage cart. It costs more, it's true, but we really need people to not be putting garbage in their recycling carts. So these are the major categories of materials that you can put in your recycling cart. So it's, as you're probably aware, metals, paper and cardboard, glass and plastic. And among metals, you know, it's the usual things, cans and foils and cookware and so forth. You can put scrap metals in your recycling cart up to about 60 pounds. And that includes like even a small appliance like a toaster if it's mostly metal. Cardboard or paper and cardboard, if you put envelopes in there, you don't have to tear the little windows out of the envelopes. You can put Post-its in there. Boxes that still have tape on them, that's fine. If you're going to put shredded paper in your recycling cart, we need you to put it in a clear plastic bag because it's considered a tangler and it can gum up the works at the material recovery facility. And then glass is pretty self-explanatory. It's glass, jars, containers. It's not broken glass like from a window or a mirror. And then in the plastics, you may be aware of the little triangular chasing arrow insignia that you'll find on the bottom of plastics that's got a number between 1 and 7 on it. And those numbers denote what kind of plastic they are. We take plastics 1 through 5. We don't take plastic number 6, which is polystyrene. So that's like the white insulated cups and the white foam packaging that you might get with an appliance or something. And we also don't take it if it's a rigid polystyrene. So you might find that in a vitamin bottle or in a takeout container. No number 6 goes in your recycling cart. So number 1 through 5 are fine. And then number 7 is all right too. That's the other category. And you can put number 7 in your recycling cart so long as it's not a compostable plastic, because that's also lumped into that number 7. So other number 7 is fine, but just not the compostable kind. It doesn't behave the same when it's recycled as the other plastics do. So these are the things we really want you to keep out of your recycling cart. Don't put clothing, bedding, shoes in your recycling cart anymore. If they're still serviceable, you can take them to a thrift store, to take Goodwill or something, or make them into rags if they're not good enough anymore. But if you're really ready to discard them and there's no other use for them, then they unfortunately need to go in the garbage cart at this point. And then I mentioned shredded paper as being a tangler. That's also true of hoses, cords, hangers, and wires. Those also need to stay out of your recycling cart because they too can gum up the conveyor belts and so forth at the material recovery facility. That's true also of plastic bags, wrap, film, snack wrappers. Those, 1, they're not identified as to what kind of plastic they are, and 2, they're so flimsy that they too can possibly gum up the works. And then diapers and pet waste, those also are not recyclable. Those need to go in the garbage can. And my pet peeve about pet waste, especially with everybody walking their dogs in the pandemic, is they seem to just lob it to their yard trimming or whatever yard trimmings pile they happen to see when they're out walking their dog. And it doesn't go in the yard trimmings pile either. And then the big one though is food soiled containers. So if you get a pizza and then the bottom of the box is covered with grease and maybe tomato sauce or cheese or whatever, that is too food soiled to be recycled. If the top of the box were clean, you could put that in your recycling cart, but anything that is food soiled like that you can't empty and scrape the food out of needs to go in the recycling cart. I'm sorry, needs to go in the garbage cart. Garbage cart. And what we say is, well, so let's go on. So how to recycle clean. I'll take you through a whole little tutorial. So for instance, my daughter, one time when she was home, she threw out this peanut butter jar of almond butter or something that had quite a lot of peanut butter still in it, which kind of shocked me that she would do that. And that can't be recycled. That's the kind of thing that if you put that in your recycling cart, that stuff could ooze out over the other clean materials that you put in your recycling cart and contaminate them so that they no longer can be recycled. So we've got this drought going on, and we certainly don't want people to be using water to make their items pristine. They don't have to be pristine, but you need to scrape out, empty and scrape out whatever's remaining in the container so that it doesn't ooze out over your other things. So our slogan is no food, no liquid, no problem. And so like this would be clean enough. See, this isn't going to ooze out and mess up your other materials. And likewise, this is clean enough as well. So the other thing we want to impress upon people is not to do what we call wish cycling, which is something that I have been guilty of in the past, where I've got an item and I don't know for certain if it can be recycled, but I just hate the idea of it spending all eternity in the landfill. Excuse me. And so I would put it in the recycling cart in hopes that they would figure out something to do with it. And at this point, we really want people to not do that. If you don't know if it's recyclable, just put it in the garbage. Don't put it in the recycling cart. But then to help you figure out whether or not it is recyclable, we now have this wonderful website called sanjoserecycles.org. And it's really handy on a smartphone or your laptop. And it's got this wonderful little search box here, and you can put things in there like fire extinguisher or dental floss or old ceramic plates or whatever. And there's over 300 items in the guide here, and it'll tell you if it goes in your recycling cart, if it goes in the garbage cart. Maybe you wonder what to do with batteries or old light bulbs or whatever, and it'll tell you that that's hazardous waste and it needs to go to the household hazardous waste drop-off facility. Or maybe you've got, what else? A laundry basket. It'll tell you what you need to do with that. Maybe you've got an old tablet, you know, an electronic tablet that's e-waste, so it'll tell you how to deal with that. It also has all sorts of information about our collection services and how to look up who your recycling hauler is, and, you know, just all of our programs. So it's sort of your first go-to line of defense in trying to answer questions about what you can do with different materials. And if after you've gone on sanjoserecycles.org, you still haven't found the answer to your question, at the bottom of the homepage, there's a little ask us a question, and you can send us an email and we'll answer within a day or two, unless you've got something that's really stumped us. But we'll get back to you with an answer. So, and then we also have lots of blogs on here about different subjects and so forth. So it's a great resource. I highly recommend you take a look at it. So one of the things they have on there is a whole section about beverage container recycling and finding recycling centers. I know that that's more problematic for people these days, but they do exist still, and it's important to turn those bottles and cans in to redeem them if that's what you want to do. You, of course, can put them in your recycling cart, but I guess there's a big article in the Chronicle today about how much money the Cal Recycle, the state of California recycling department has in the way of beverage container deposits that people have not redeemed. So that money's there for the asking. So we have some other things for me to tell you about. I want to make sure people know about our free junk pickup program, which is really handy. It's unlimited. You can have as many appointments as you need. And it used to be that you can only put out 3 items per appointment, but I had a neighbor over here a couple months ago, must have put out 20 items. And I was like, how on earth are they going to do that? Take that many items? And I talked to the drivers and they said, yeah, we'll take it all. So I guess, you call up and you can say, I've got these 6 items, and they can tell you if you can do it all in one appointment, or maybe it's going to take more than one appointment. But you can put out mattresses and sofas and appliances and so forth. The only caveat is it has to be items that originated in your house in San Jose. We don't want you bringing things from somebody's house, your cabin that you sold up in the mountains, and you need to get rid of the furniture or whatever. It wouldn't be kosher for you to bring it here and dispose of it through our junk pickup program. And then the county runs the household hazardous waste program, and that also is free. While the junk pickup program, they'll come and pick up the stuff for you. With the household hazardous waste program, you need to take the stuff to them, but you can get rid of batteries and solvents and pesticides and paint and light bulbs and technology. You just call this number, this 299-7300 number, or you can go to hhw.org. There's a drop-off facility in San Jose. You put the stuff in your trunk, you drive up, you don't have to get out of your car, pop the trunk for them. They'll come out, they're all set to take it and sequester like things together so that there's no hazards, and you don't have to risk causing a truck fire or a MRF fire when you throw an old battery or a propane tank or something in your recycling cart. And then we've talked a little bit about yard trimmings. I want to talk some about compost too. Yard trimmings are taken to a composting facility in Gilroy called Z-Best. And they make different types of and grades of compost depending on what the feedstock is. And the compost that gets made from pure yard trimmings is better apparently than the compost that gets made from food waste. And so if you have a fruit tree that you've trimmed in your backyard, when you take the branches out to put them in your yard trimmings pile, don't put the fruit in the yard trimmings pile. I know that seems sort of odd, but that can go in your garbage can if you're not going to eat it or, you know, put it out free for your neighbors or something. So you may have heard about this new law called SB 1383. It's a food waste law that just got implemented in California. It came online on January 1st, and the goal is to reduce organic waste disposal by 75% by 2025. And so that means they want to keep food and food soiled paper, you know, anything that used to be alive, they want to keep it out of the landfill. Because when organics get put in a landfill, they end up breaking down in the absence of oxygen, which is called anaerobic digestion. And when they don't have oxygen, when it breaks down, it creates methane, and that's one of those nasty greenhouse gases. So we want to reduce the amount of methane that is being put out by landfills. There's also just a lot of service, or still good food that gets thrown out, and there's people in need in the county. So another part of SB 1383 is to somehow get surplus food that's not waste food to the people who need it. And then the food waste. So the way that some cities are doing it is they're having a dedicated food waste bucket for people to use. But in San Jose, what we've done is we did a pilot with that and found that there was not very uniform participation by residents. And so what we've done is whatever food waste you put in your garbage can is going to go to a separate MRF from where your recyclables go. And so a MRF that takes garbage and food waste is called a dirty MRF. A MRF that just takes recyclables is called a clean MRF. And word to the wise, if you ever go for a tour to a MRF, try to get to a clean MRF instead of a dirty MRF, because it does not smell nearly as bad. But anyway, any food waste that you put in your garbage cart is going to go to the dirty MRF, and then they separate, they process everything that comes in there. And the organics also go down to Gilroy to the same facility, and that too is turned into compost. And then that compost is available to use back here in the county again. And one of the nice things about compost is that it improves the health of your soil, and healthy soil can sequester carbon better. So it's sort of a win-win. You're not creating the methane on the landfill side, and you're helping sequester carbon on the compost side. So anyway, so what it means for you is that you don't have to do anything differently. You can just put your food in the garbage and it'll go to this place and it'll get composted. So if this is all sort of piqued your interest, we also have a monthly newsletter, and I know none of us get enough to read. But if you want more information about garbage and recycling services in San Jose, or just what's going on now that's new and interesting, then you can subscribe to our newsletter, the Loop. And I'll put this URL in the chat for you, so you can sign up there if you want. But when's the best time to reduce waste? It's really when you buy. It's when you go shopping. So if you can buy things that aren't disposable, like the ubiquitous reusable straw or reusable utensils or whatever, or wherever you can do things where you buy things that don't have just one use, a reusable water bottle and so forth, then you can sort of reduce your impact on our landfills and on the recycling markets and so forth. One thing that my husband and I have done is we put a to-go kit in the trunk of our car, and if we're on a road trip or something, we've got reusable napkins and reusable utensils and reusable straws, so that we at least don't get that waste. And then we also have our own takeout containers, so that if we go to a restaurant and we have leftovers, we don't have to use the restaurant's doggy bag. And then one of my coworkers arranged with her butcher at her local grocery store that she takes her own containers with her when she buys meat there, and he uses her container instead of using their plastic bags and their butcher paper and so forth. So you can look at what are you putting in your garbage can and see if you can think of things that you could do differently that would make it so that you weren't generating that waste. So that's all I had to say. I hope I was within my 15 minutes.
Close, that's fine. Sam's still rambling on.
Oh, okay.
Are there any questions for Lyndon?
Yeah, I have a question. For this food waste program, how does it get enforced? Are people coming around looking through garbage and recycling bins for food waste?
No, not for food waste, because I'm sort of assuming if you're not putting your food waste in your garbage can, you're putting it down your disposal, which is fine, or you're composting it yourself. And then what we do is we do cart studies every so often on recycling carts to figure out what's going into recycling carts and how much of it is actual clean recyclables and how much of it isn't. And there's some parts of the city where more than half of what's going into recycling carts is garbage. And so we're doing sort of a full court press. We're going to neighborhood association meetings like this, and working with our sports teams to try and get the word out, and doing a lot of advertising, and just whatever we can to try and get the word out to people, especially in these areas that have high contamination, that they need to stop that.
Yeah, but I understand that this is a law that requires us to recycle food waste. Being a law, it has to be enforced somehow. So my question again is, how is this going to be enforced?
I don't have a good answer for you on that. I'm more of the recycling person, not so much the food waste person, but I can ask the food waste people and get the answer and get it back to you through Pat.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Lyndon. Sherry, you had a question.
Yeah, so before I thought that we could recycle plastic bags, and I learned a year or so back that we're not supposed to. So, and with COVID, there's not as many places to recycle plastic bags. And in fact, the only one that's anywhere near where we live is on the corner of King and Tully, I think, or King and Story, one of those, which isn't conveniently located. And so I'm wondering, when are we going to start getting those plastic bags where we can recycle them at our grocery stores again, like we used to?
I don't know. I fortunately for me, my husband does more of the grocery shopping than I do, but when I go and I think of it, I look to see if there are plastic bag bins, and the stores that I've been in, I have been able to find them, but the garbage and recycling fees that you pay to the city, it's sort of constrained what we can spend that money on. We have to spend it on providing garbage and recycling services to you. And that doesn't necessarily include, setting up with grocery stores that they have these plastic bag bins. So it's not, I don't know that it's something that anybody on staff is going to be addressing very soon, because we've all got very full plates as it is. And I'm not sure that we can do that with that funding source.
Is that a San Jose City thing, or how do we get?
No, I think that that's more of a
used to have
state
it.
thing. I think that's more of a state thing. But if you go on sanjoserecycles.org, there is a page that you can go on there and put in your zip code, and there's a map that'll show you where there are plastic bags.
Yes, I did that, and that's what I'm referring to. But
Oh, really?
we used to have them at, most of the grocery stores, and then they pulled them all out with COVID. But it's time to get back on it.
Why? I would suggest asking them. Tell them, hey, I want that bin back. How about
You mean the grocery stores or the
Mhm.
politicians?
the grocery?
Probably both. All
Yeah.
right, Daniel, you have a question?
Sam will be
Uh,
here soon. You can ask him.
Yes, good evening. California is the fifth economy. And I remember when I was going to high school, there was a program in school that said, do it right. Is there an educational program campaign statewide that addresses how much we pollute? That's one question. The other one is, has anything been done for the homeless, that when you drive, you can see a lot of garbage and everything that is not being recycled properly, probably. And it's a big problem right now, probably in most of the cities. Those are the two questions.
Okay, so at the state level, I don't think that there is a statewide, curriculum on that.
Because it starts from children, from elementary, to know
Yeah.
what is right.
Yeah,
The parents, sometimes they already have their ways and they don't care. And the children learn from the parents. So someone has to teach the children the importance of safekeeping the planet.
right. Well,
And
we're
do it-
actually,
Pacemaking, that no one has a cohesive program, I don't think it's going to be successful.
we've just entered into a contract with a little company called Eco Hero. And it's this young guy who got his degree in business and entrepreneurship from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo 5 or 6 years ago. And he has started this company where they put on these shows for kids, and it's all about garbage and not littering and recycling and the environment and all this stuff. And so he's going to be doing these shows at schools in San Jose. And he's going to be focusing on, the recycle right thing, but also on litter and so forth. So he's doing that all up and down the state. So he's contracting with individual cities or individual school districts to do that.
What about the homeless?
So with the homeless, that's not like my central expertise, but my understanding is that during the pandemic, there was a moratorium on on breaking up homeless encampments so that people could stay put and it could be safer that way. And I think it was my understanding that there was more solid waste services and sanitary services. And when a homeless encampment is broken up, there's cleanup that happens afterwards. And those materials also go to that dirty MRF. And so those materials are separated out, and not all of it just goes straight to the landfill.
What about plastic straws in the restaurants? I visited Mexico for 1 month, and Mexico City has about 18 million people, and they no longer put plastic straws in the restaurants. What about San Jose?
We don't have a law like that. We did stop expanded polystyrene food serviceware, but we don't have a straw thing. But when Sam comes on, tell him that you want a ban on plastic straws in San Jose.
There you go. Now, that's not a recycling issue, so we'll move along there. Lyndon, thank you very much. We appreciate you stopping by. That's some good information, and will help people understand the importance of recycling effectively. I'm going to move Robert Reese's land use discussion up, or update up, while we wait for Sam to somehow finish up with his budget meeting. And Daniel, can you put your hand down, please?
Oh,
Robert?
thank you.
Thank you, Pat. And if you see that Sam comes, give me the high sign and I'll cut it short. Just a few updates. Janet has been working on trying to get a meeting with the Temple Foundation funders, Chris Larson and Lena Lamb. And she's been working on it for quite some time. And hopefully she's a little bit closer to making it happen. It would be in a very small group format where there could be a direct discussion with the foundation founders about the Temple project. I think it's important that as we continue on the saga of this, that there's a clear understanding that they essentially designed what they wanted without discussing anything with the community. And even before they got their consultants involved in doing the community outreach. So basically, that makes things more difficult when someone decides what they want without getting community input and isn't open to compromising to any significant degree. That's part of what this process has been struggling with. The EIR is going to be released in the spring, we believe. Janet, did you want to say something? Good. Sandy and I attended the San Jose Evergreen Community College District meeting earlier this week, and Sandy has been asking the prior chancellor and board president to place on the agenda the discussion of how San Jose Evergreen Community College District underserves its residents. Deanne's a foothill district, which is about half the size, 500,000, than San Jose's. Offers many more, like 73 degrees. Evergreen only offers 43. So she requested that this be placed on the agenda. Chancellor Breland and Board President Fuentes agreed. So she reached out recently to the interim chancellor, and he got back to her immediately. She was trying to confirm that it would be placed on the agenda, and he confirmed that. And in a very strong, clear thinking, he referred to it as out-migration and said it was of big concern to him. So that's kind of the strong expression that we've got about the underserving issue for a long time. Also, San Jose Evergreen Community College District is planning housing. They don't know where. It may or may not be the 27 acres. It's too early to tell. We'll keep you posted on that. I had sent out an email to Pat, the Land Use Committee, Janet, and Steering Committee about the land use meeting in May. And I think that if anyone got the email or saw it and saw Pat's response, I think we have a plan. We're going to try to do a deep dive on Evergreen East Hills development area, which is the 800 acres of underutilized land between Story Road and southeast Evergreen. And have some good speakers, and then also get an update from Martina Davis from San Jose Planning, who was at our prior meeting on SB 9 to find out about implementation. I think that might be it. Daniel, did you want to add anything? I don't see Sandy. Okay, thank you, Pat.
Oh, I needed you to fill more time.
Okay.
Well, you can if you want. Sam, I think, is intending on taking his full 2 hours with the
Okay,
meeting.
Steve,
Yeah.
Steve, go ahead. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Everybody do a shot.
Oh, Howry. Now
You're
you
good.
hear me?
Yes,
Sorry. You said between Story and Southeast Evergreen, some open land. Where exactly is this?
there's about 800 acres of underutilized or vacant land. It includes, the 20-acre Sitter site to the 400-acre Measure B area site on Yerba Buena Road, with 135 acres at Pleasant Hills Golf Course. Eastridge in its entirety is about, I think, 85 acres. The Reed Hillview is 135 acres. So it's all those land areas. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're kind of going from a situation where we had Dave Cortese with Jim and Sherry involved in a very robust community planning process, where we looked at the future development, anticipated it. The community was very involved, and we were looking at community benefits. Now, we don't know where we are. Basically, the only planning community engagement process is getting a postcard 10 days before a community meeting. So there's not really, you got to figure out how we're going to be involved other than at the last minute.
That's part of the reason for the May meeting. Janet, you have a question?
You're on mute, Janet.
Here we go. Okay, thank you. Yes, the question was, I had seen this morning in the San Jose Spotlight information on the community colleges, and I was a little bit blown away by the attendee numbers that they have for both Foothill and De Anza, being like twice as many or more than what we have. The other thing that was really interesting to me, and I'm wondering how maybe you guys look at it, is that what the students seem to want is more at home over the internet teaching instruction versus having to go into the actual campus. And I thought that was really interesting. I'm not sure if anybody read it, but I wonder what the implications might be for the land use at Evergreen Valley College.
Well, it was really at the point where the district was saying that the 27 acres was surplus land, not needed for educational uses, that Sandy and others started doing a deep dive into the disparity in these enrollment numbers. So basically, I think what you were referring to is that De Anza Foothill already had 50% online or distance learning or asynchronous learning prior to the pandemic. So, it's complicated, but basically the way that we're looking at it is the history of California school financing is basically a legacy of disparity in the way schools are funded. So basically you have De Anza Foothill, which are funded based on a pure pupil reimbursement from the state, so that they're very interested in expanding courses and programs, drawing in new students because they're getting reimbursed pure pupil. So that marginal cost of the new student really works out well for their overall way of providing services. Whereas San Jose Evergreen is a basic aid. The property tax revenue is derived from within the district. It's high enough that there is very little reimbursements by the state. So there's sort of perhaps a disincentive to offer as many courses and programs as the ones that are reimbursed per pupil. But we're slowly making progress on getting that discussed. And the ultimate solution of it may be having a certain number of additional students and based on classes and programs established. Daniel, I see you had a question or a comment.
No, I just want to emphasize the importance of the land use committee. If you're coming from Blossom Hill to Silver Creek Road, you see a new building that is for storage. And I remember when the developers that wanted to build over here at the 27 acres, they wanted to do something similar, almost against the sidewalk. And the committee, I believe, can take pride in saying that we stopped them, because the developers sometimes have something else in mind. They're not from our community, and they come and they try to put buildings that we really don't particularly appreciate. So what I'm trying to tell you is that I think a lot of the members should try to be part of this committee that I believe is a very important role for the community. Thank you.
In
Okay.
terms of,
No, go ahead, Robert.
should I continue?
No, go ahead.
to speak? Okay, so basically some things that we know that are happening. There's going to be one of the Costco mega gas stations along Quimby Road. I believe that it's something that can be approved administratively more or less by a planning director's hearing, I think, but I'm not exactly sure. It's in some of those, anyone been to the furniture stores in those large concrete tilt-up industrial type buildings, carpet and furniture stores? We know that's going in, and then there's going to be a small application within the Village Square where they're going to ask for a general plan change from open space, park, and habitat to residential. It's a small location. It's in a good location, the Village Square, for housing. The implications of changing a general plan designation from parks and habitat and open space could be broader than just the one development. It is the 700 acres that the Village Square are located in was very carefully planned out with an allocation of open space and development. So it's a little bit peculiar that they're coming in and asking for a change on that. But it's a small project in housing. It's a good location.
Okay, any other questions for Robert? All right, thank you, Robert. Oh, Janet?
Yes, I had one more, and that was in and this is like preliminary perhaps, but in reference to our evergreen policy and the areas that are designated red that shouldn't be built on. Robert, you had I think there was something that new that came up where maybe affordable housing could be put there. If you can maybe explain a little bit about that, and that the concern would be the Pleasant Hills Golf Course area.
So when Department of Transportation personnel, Deputy Director Jessica Zink came out, she explained to us initially that vehicles mile traveled, VMT, designated easterly portions of Evergreen and southerly portions of Evergreen as red, which would be essentially non-developable areas. But from the period of time when she initially told us that, and the reason she said that they wouldn't be developed were because the fees would be so high that they would preclude residential development. They would also preclude the development the city ostensibly wants, commercial. But basically, she was very confident about it working, but things change, discussions go in a different direction. So since that presentation to the D8 roundtable, they have been studying internally changes to the VMT red area, in particular related to affordable housing. Also, we're kind of getting mixed messages. At the General Plan Task Force meetings, Cindy Chavez was talking about what a wonderful site the Pleasant Hills Golf Course would be for housing since it was so close to the light rail. That may be the case. That may or may not be a good idea, but it tends to contradict what planning staff had told us, which is the fee structure was going to preclude development. So along with Jessica Hink's study, council had a discussion, and the council got on board, amplifying what she was doing, maybe suggesting she go a little bit further, but they're looking at doing things very much different than what Jessica told us. And they're looking at opening up to some degree the vehicle miles traveled red area in ways that weren't described to us previously. They might not agree that they're opening it up, but what Jessica initially said about them not being developable areas is seeming to be contradicted. And I think who knows the right answer, but the first step is, how is the community going to be involved? Are we going to have a process like Dave Cortese had, or are we going to get the postcard in the mail 10 days before a meeting?
That's the importance of our May meeting. I look forward to that. Sam's getting ready to wrap up his thing. I see Nancy Lee and Tay Vu here. Let's do that right now, and it'll fill the time between now and when Sam wraps up. Nancy, you want to talk about what's going on at the council, please? Are you there, Nancy? Maybe not. How about Tay Vu?
Good evening, everyone. Just want to share a quick share. The Board of Supervisors have adopted the new supervisor district's boundary, and Evergreen no longer in our area, but Supervisor Lee want to remain committed to help the neighborhood in Evergreen. So just want to share with everyone on that. And from the board meeting, the county has received $2.4 million grant from the state to assist small business less than 5 employees that in 2019 and 2020, with the total business revenue in 2019 less than $50,000 impact by COVID. This grant award limit to 2,500, but the Board of Supervisors is looking into expanding the micro business grant program to smaller business impacts by COVID-19 that will start after 2019. And then the board asked staff to coming back on March 22nd to see like if it's okay to move forward. So to expand the grant for those who affects by COVID after 2019. So that is one item coming up that we would like to share. Another is in the North counties, because the number of residents calling in for help. So in 2019, there's 414 visits, and then but in 2021, it's go up to 1,829 trips. So the Board of Supervisors decide to like establish a mobile crisis response team in the North County, West Valley region of the Santa Clara County. That team composed of 3 licensed psychiatrists, social worker, and health service to support the resident in the North. So that is some of the things that we have in the last board meeting. I just want to share with everyone. And then regard of the jails, we did the proposal is 835 beds in the main jails. We finalized to reduce down to 500 beds instead. But Supervisor Lee want to like commit to build a standalone mental health facility with a drug treatment and expand our behavior health treatment option while fulfilling our obligation to protect the community. So that is some of the things that are happening from the last board meeting. Just want to share with everyone.
Thank you, Tay Vu. Appreciate it. And I enjoyed having Otto as our supervisor. I like Mike Wasserman too. So I've got the 2 best on the Board of Supervisors. Nancy, you're back in action.
Thank you, Pat. As soon as I walked away just for a second to grab some water.
It always works that way, doesn't it?
Good evening, everyone. Nancy Lay with the Office of Councilmember Sylvia Denez. I'm very excited to share back that we have some updates coming our way from City Hall. Our City Council meetings continue to be virtual. It was announced just this past week that we're expecting to continue virtual until March and then revisit and see if we'd be able to resume a hybrid council structure. Earlier this month, boosters are also now required for any events that take place in city-owned facilities. So that up-to-date vaccination includes a booster and is required for anybody who is eligible to receive one. One of the other resources that we want to share and make sure that our residents are aware of is in District 8. They are the largest residents who are being served by our San Jose Muni Water. And we wanted to share that Municipal Water is now offering online registration for any low-income eligible customers. And that registration is being expanded to now allow online in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Most recently, our San Jose Permitting Center earlier this year, due to the surge, was closed for in-person appointments and had to revert previously back to online-only services. I'm happy to share that our Permitting Center is now reopened at City Hall for services, but is by appointment only. I know there's quite a few residents who have shared in the past that they have some permitting work that they're doing underway, and I'm happy to share that you can now walk back into City Hall with an appointment to receive those services. The last update I want to share on behalf of Councilmember Arenas is I know this group of residents and neighbors have been really invested in our COVID-19 recovery process. As we move forward, the city and our city council has established a COVID-19 recovery task force. And this task force has their next meeting in once a month, and I'd be happy to share that information over to Pat to help distribute and see if there's any interested neighbors here who would like to listen in on those materials. I'll also drop in the email link for that cohort group. Their most recent meeting just took place earlier this evening, so I'll be sure to share the information for the next one and hope our neighbors can continue to stay engaged. Thank you so much, Pat.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate the report. Derek, you want to talk about your school district real quick? Or are you off getting water?
Hey,
Derek?
Pat,
Yeah.
Pat, what is the COVID? Can you ask Nancy, or Nancy, what is the COVID-19 recovery task force? What are they doing? What is that?
It's a task force that's convened by the city manager's office. Thank you, Sherry, for that question. And they're working on getting community feedback in terms of what our community needs to make sure that our city is making sure that our response is need-based and listening to community engagement throughout that process. So it's a really great place for us to see and help direct as residents to share where the city should be focusing some of our COVID-19 resources. And I'm just about to drop the website and the email for that task force into the chat.
Okay, thank you. It's been around for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's had quite a few meetings. It started convening towards the fall of last year.
Derek, are you out there? Or are you just, did you fall asleep on me? All right. Hey, Nancy, one other question, and that is what's the status of the charter work that was done by the Charter Commission? Where are we now?
Of course, there is a very minor update. One of the items that was recommended by the Charter Review Commission to move the mayoral election over to presidential years will be going to council next week to be considered as a proposed ballot measure, but all of the other remaining items have been redirected over to 2 study sessions, and those 2 study sessions have not yet been scheduled. As soon as we have those dates, I'd be happy to circle back and keep this group engaged.
Yeah, thank you. There's some interesting things that came out of that whole thing. Okay, Sherry, you want to give us an update on the Evergreen School District?
Sure. So as some of you know, I'm a health aide at one of the elementary schools here in Evergreen. And so we had quite a surge when we came back from the holiday vacation. Our numbers, my numbers at my school probably quadrupled from what they had been. But things are looking better now. We've been heading back down on those percentages, and we have much fewer positive cases now. There are rules that are always in flux, and are rules that have changed this week to the point where for a positive COVID case now for a student, they can, the default is for them to be out for 10 days, but they are able to only be out for 5 days if they can provide a negative test and if they're symptom free. And they just make sure that they're masked up whenever they're near other people. So that's kind of good news in that from keeping kids out of school for 10 days for a positive case, and now we're down to 5 days. So we're hoping that we're heading in the right direction. And, you know, we have another break here in about another week, a week off. So we're hopeful that people will be responsible and then we'll keep heading in the right direction. And if there's any questions about that, I'm happy to flag them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I started watching this in South Africa. They said that cases for Omicron fell off a cliff. I mean, they went up like a skyrocket, and then they just cratered. And I've been watching the county statistics, and the same thing is happening in Santa Clara County. I mean, it is falling like a rock. So I was kind of surprised when in the Mercury News today, they commented that the county wasn't going to remove mask restrictions for potentially a month or so until the case count gets down, because I looked at the trend, and I mean, in a week or less, a week or two maybe, the case rate should be way below what it was at the end of Delta. So we'll see what happens. It's encouraging anyway.
Yeah, for me, and the amount of positive cases I had from August through December, we had about 4 times that amount in just January.
Yeah, it was very virulent, but much less of a problem.
Sherry, what do you mean 4 times? How many? What's the numbers?
So I'm not sure what it is for the district, but you figure, let's say, for example, we might have had 20 for 3 months, and then we had like 80 in January. It wasn't quite that amount, but you get the idea. It was pretty close to 4 times the amount. So it was a lot for in January. Everybody coming back from vacation, and they it was being the Omicron is very highly transmissible, especially when you're in the same household. So be careful.
All right, Sam is in the process of joining in on us. Yeah, if you look at the case counts, Omicron to Delta throughout the county, it's a vast difference, like maybe in the order of 4 times. I haven't done the math, but I mean, it's a big difference. But the death count is way down. So it's encouraging. It's encouraging. It's just that the case rate was so high that a small percentage of a large number can be a lot of people. So there was concern about hospital capacity just because of that. So Sam's in the process of hooking up because I got kicked out of his webinar. Soon as his video comes on after he has his drink or pizza slice or whatever he's doing right now, I'll welcome him to the group.
Thanks, Pat. This is Paul Pereira. I just logged on. You're right. He's just grabbing some water real quick, and then we'll join.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. So yeah, the signs are encouraging, which is why I think that moving the mayoral forum to April will give us a pretty good opportunity to have it a hybrid version. And Wes is working on figuring out how we do that for me. Thank you, Wes. And Pastor John tells me they upgraded the sound system at his place. So we'll hopefully have a quality event there.
And Pat,
yeah.
while we're waiting for Sam to log on, just a quick shout out to Pastor John, which I understand it has a refrigerator outside the church there for, he knows the correct term, but basically there's a fridge out there for people in need that we citizens can donate food to this refrigerator, and people who excuse me, are in need can just stop by and get it and no questions asked.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I thought so too. Good job, Pastor
Yeah,
John.
so that was the summer before last when we had the fires and the hot weather. My wife put out a cooler full of drinks and snacks on our front porch for all the delivery guys, with the sign saying, "Please take what you want." And we got a couple of thank you notes from them, and a couple of guys who knocked on the door and said thank you. A couple of people who knocked on the door and said thank you. So, I mean, it's little things like that that help make this a better world. So I encourage everybody to think about ways they can do that, because I want to live in a nice community. And I think we do. So now Sam's logged in as Paul. Interesting. Any other comments before Sam gets up? Janet?
Yeah, I had something passed along to me a couple days ago, and it looks like at the Islamic Center at Ruby and Tully, they're offering on Sundays only, by appointment only, free medical treatment. So it's not for emergencies, but I posted that under the Evergreen Leadership Group, and I can put that up on our Facebook page as well. But it looks like quite a nice benefit for some of the folks right around that area.
Quimby.
It's Ruby and Tully, and it's by the Islamic temple.
Looks like the mayor is experiencing technical difficulties. You can put your hand down, Janet. There he is.
Hey, Pat, how you doing?
I'm fabulous, Mayor. Thank you
Excellent,
for
sir.
joining us. So you all know Sam. He joined the city council, I believe, in 2007. And in 2015, he swore the oath of office of the mayor of San Jose. And the kind of person he is, one of the first meetings I had with him when he was mayor was over at Pastor John's. I forget what the subject was, but we went around introducing everybody. And Sam introduced himself by saying, "I'm Mayor Sam, and I work for you." And I think he's done a good job of keeping that attitude, even through some rather tough times, and has done, in my mind, a good job for the city of San Jose during some rather tough times. And he's been kind enough to come and talk to us for a bit, to reflect on his time serving the community, both as council person and mayor, and what he thinks he has left to do for the slightly about a year left in office. And then if we have time, maybe field a couple of questions. So thank you, Mayor. We really appreciate you coming to share your time with us.
Hey, thanks, Pat. Are you all able to hear me okay? I noticed that my signal seems to be stopping a little bit. Okay, great. And thanks for your patience. I know a few minutes late. I just got done with a budget community meeting. So I suspect this may be a continuation of that discussion about all the things we need to do in our city. Thank you, Pat, for your warm introduction and for inviting me to talk and to listen. I just thought, since I just got done talking about budget, I might as well just tell you we're starting our budget process for this year. And I want to invite everybody to participate. We will continue to have these community listening sessions, but also obviously hearings in front of the council and so forth. So this is definitely the time to let your voice be heard. I'll tell you very clearly what my top 3 priorities are going to be, but obviously we'll need to deal with many things, but the top 3 will be, frankly, homelessness, crime and public safety, and then finally blight and trash. So we're going to be focusing an awful lot on those three priorities in particular and how we can do a better job in all those areas. But I think it would be a better idea for me not to keep talking, since I just spent 2 hours talking, and maybe to listen a little bit, hear your suggestions and your questions. I'd be happy to respond. Unless there's some area you want me to cover, Pat, I'm happy to go into that.
No. Well, it's just a brief, if you would, just take a couple minutes to talk about what you'd like to accomplish in the rest of your time as
Okay,
mayor,
sure.
and what we can do to help you check those
Thank you.
boxes off.
Thank you. Well, I'll start with the priorities I just mentioned. On homelessness, I announced a goal of trying to get 1,000 of what we call these quick build apartments under construction by the end of this year. We know, look, homeless has been a huge challenge in every big city west of Denver, as far as I can tell, and even some cities east. And we've got a long way to go to get this thing tackled, but we are learning that there are some better approaches that are helping us accelerate some of this. And what we learned during the pandemic is that we could deploy dollars in a more cost-effective way with prefabricated modular housing built on maybe some public sites that were less desirable for developers. And you undoubtedly have seen some of these sites, I think, down in your neck of the woods over on Rue Ferrari off of 101. And also, I think one over on, not far from there, over on, oh gosh, not Brown, Monterey and Burnell. Yes, Monterey and Burnell, yeah. So those are a couple of the projects we got going pretty quickly. And they're providing transitional housing in what are really essentially dorm rooms, bedrooms, private baths. Very simple to build, about $100,000 a unit rather than $800,000, which is what it's costing a typical project. If we were to build, affordable housing in other ways, like with Measure A and so forth. And so we know that permanent housing has to get built, but in the meantime, we got to do something that enables us to move more nimbly and get more people off the street. So we're going to work hard on getting that to get built and getting all of it funded. That'll be a battle of mine over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Secondly, around crime and public safety, huge frustration, I know, for our police officers and for our community members. There's a lot of arrests are resulting in folks getting taken down to the jail only to be released in an hour or two. And that is not doing much, certainly, to help our community. And it's not doing much to help a lot of these guys who frankly have serious meth habits. And, they're often being released in the community while they're still high on meth. I've taken my frustration to various decision makers, the DA's office, the judges, the county, about how we can all work together to try to get more of these folks who should be in jail, and where we can't, to get facilities in place that can offer drug treatment or at least detoxification, to enable folks to come down and be in a place where they will be at least more amenable to civilized living than you are when you're high on meth. So you're going to hear a lot of conversation about this over the next few weeks. I'll be elevating this quite a bit. The good news is, I think, the DA's, I think, shares a lot of my frustration. I think the judges have recognized where some of the challenges are, and some of it is not their fault. It's, it's simply a matter of the pandemic constraining the number of spaces that can be used at the jail, because they've had serious problems with the COVID transmission within the jail as well, and they're struggling. The sheriff's office is clearly struggling there. But they have rearranged some of their processes, like in the arraignment calendar, that I hope will ensure that more of the serious and predatory criminals are in fact remain behind bars until their trial. So we're going to continue to push on that. The city doesn't have a lot of direct control there, but we're looking at how we can use, for example, some city money to create prefabricated modular spaces where you can have outpatient treatment and folks can be referred in those spaces rather than simply being released out on the street. So we'll keep working on that. With regard to blight and trash, we're working hard to expand a couple important programs that I think have been working. We just need a lot more of it. And one of those programs is called San Jose Bridge, where we are employing unhoused residents, cleaning up trash, cleaning up our city. We want to get 150 of our unhoused residents those jobs. And in addition to that, we're getting them housing and services as well, if they're participating and working. And we've already enabled a couple dozen of those folks to move on to permanent jobs with other great employers like Tesla. Believe it or not, just hired one of our unhoused residents, fantastic, and he's now housed, Caltrans and some other folks. So we're gonna keep working on that. Working on trying to get Caltrans to step up to the plate to properly fund freeway cleanups. What we've discovered after analysis of their budget is that San Jose and Santa Clara County is getting a disproportionately low share of their resources relative to other counties in the Bay Area. And so I'll be meeting again with the Caltrans director. We had a very robust discussion in a public meeting at the Valley Transportation Authority. And it's fair to say I pointed out some very serious discrepancies, and other members piled on. So we're going to continue to push hard on that. And then finally on that, we have a program. We're also dealing with unhoused residents who we know we can't get housed. We just don't have enough housing yet, with a program called Cash for Trash. That is trying to partner with them to provide them with dollars they need to sustain themselves through a cash payment card that MasterCard's made available. They can only use this payment card at grocery stores. They can't use it at liquor stores, can't use it at dispensaries and other places. So we know that they're using the card for its intended purpose. And we pay them in exchange for their filling of city bags that we provide them with trash in their areas and cleaning up their areas and surrounding areas. So it's a way in which they can obviously keep their own living areas clean at the same time. They're able to get a few bucks to help sustain themselves on a weekly basis. We do this now. So we are expanding that program. We're now at 250. We're expanding to about 500 unhoused residents. And we hope that will both help them survive a bit and also help to keep our community cleaner. So those are a few things that we're working on. We've got a lot more things we're trying to work on in a bigger way around efforts citywide. I'll just mention one more and then I'll stop, I promise. Initiative I launched a couple of years ago called San Jose Aspires is really funded overwhelmingly with private contributions. We've raised about $8 million so far to help first generation students get a path to college. What we know about an awful lot of our students, the majority don't have college educated parents, of course. They're in public high school today, particularly in schools like, well, the ones we're serving right now, Overfelt and San Jose High. Overwhelmingly students of color who come from families that qualify for subsidized lunch. So we're targeting those very students who are coming from low-income families. And we are providing them with micro scholarships on a digital platform. They earn what they call scholar dollars for every good decision they make, accomplishment they make on their path from the very first week of high school. And the idea is to provide them with information, clear information that they're not getting otherwise, about whether the good decisions they need to make to get to college, to be on a college going path, around taking A through G courses and after school programs and summer jobs and all the other things they can do. And they earn these scholar dollars and they have an account, and we've sort of gamified it. So they're, we hope they think they're playing, oh boy, I'm getting a call. This is probably from my wife. I'll call her back.
The $10 fine in my meetings.
That's right. That's right. Okay. All right. I'll kick in. So in any event, we've now got 1,200 students in this program, and we're going to expand it a bit more because we keep raising money for it. And the idea is to try to create a new model for philanthropy and for opportunity for our young students. At the end of these 4 years, those scholar dollars become real dollars, and they can use $5,000 to offset the cost of college. In addition, they're going to learn a lot about other dollars they can get because they're required to fill out a FAFSA form to participate in this, learn about financial aid. So they're going to leverage these $5,000 with a lot more dollars and really get more of our young students onto college and beyond. So that's up and running now at Overfelt and San Jose High, and we're going to keep pushing to expand it. So those are some of the things I'm working on this year. We got a lot more brewing. Pat, take it away.
That. Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, education is really important. Sherry, you had your hand up. Did he stumble across an answer to your question? Okay, Daniel.
Almost right.
Good evening, Mayor.
Hey, Daniel.
I've been involved with Evergreen College, bringing students from middle school. And in the program or the project is called Science Citizen Initiative. And at one time, we started giving them $500 per year if they were to complete, thinking that that will keep them in the project. However, we changed our mind, and instead what we're doing, we bought kits so they can get involved in doing robots. And also we're thinking of taking them to museums in other areas, probably in the industry, high tech, so they get to see something that their parents probably would never take them to.
Yeah.
So I don't think that money is the answer, a scholarship like that, because when the professor tried it at a high school level, and it was a complete failure. So we're trying now to do it at elementary level. We started them younger. So we started with 8, now we have 32 students of all different levels, high school, middle school, and elementary. And we get the parents involved. I bring them to my home, I give them pizza to the parents, and I teach them what's the importance of education for the children, because like you mentioned, the parents probably never went to a formal education.
Yep.
So think about it as to how is it better to not carry a dollar sign, because that's not the answer.
No, it's not.
Teaching them what is the importance of education at a younger level.
Yeah, the money is part of the answer, Daniel. You're absolutely right, though. There's a lot more.
Well, I know it's socioeconomic.
Yeah.
As an Hispanic, I know the problem that we have.
Let me be clear, Daniel. You're absolutely right. Money is not going to be an incentive to somehow get students to do what they otherwise wouldn't do. That's absolutely true. And I would never want to think that somehow or another we can use this extrinsic source of motivation, that is money, to get some kind of long-term change. Human beings don't work that way. They need intrinsic motivation. They need to know that this is something that matters to them in their future and to their families. What the money does, though, is 2 very, very important things. One is it provides signposts. That is, the scholar dollars indicate with valuations what are the good decisions that can be made, because there is no one right now that is telling them on a routine basis. And you can, transport yourself into the mind of a 14 or 15-year-old who lives on their smartphone, right? They are gamifying everything, all the stimulus that's coming to them routinely, right? So we have to reach them in a way that they are engaged with already, that is on their smartphone, where they're able to see on a daily basis how they're doing against their goals and what this platform is telling them about what the options are that are out there for them. And the scholar dollars help identify those options for them, because that path is not clear to them. It's not made clear to them because in the state of California, the average public high school student gets 12 minutes of college counseling in their entire 4 years. So they simply don't get the information. So the dollars are about a signpost. The second thing the dollars do is it helps them to understand that this financial barrier that so many of them have been, for whatever reason, inculcated to believe, hey, I'm poor, I live in this neighborhood, my family doesn't have money for college, that there are means for them to get the dollars to overcome those big financial hurdles to college. And that when we pair scholar dollars, for example, with, hey, you got to fill out a FAFSA form, and you need to go take this online class to learn about financial aid. Now, all of a sudden, the scholar dollars are helping them understand, oh, wait a minute, there's a lot of opportunity for me to earn scholarships, to be able to get loans, do what I need to do to overcome this very big financial hurdle that would otherwise exist for me and my family. So that's the point of the dollars. It's not about incentives. It's not about making people do what they wouldn't otherwise do. It's about information and showing a path.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel De La Rosa.
Oh, hi. Can you guys hear me?
Hey, Daniel.
Hello. So my question is basically,
Daniel, you just cut out. I think your
Now
mic
we
just
can't hear you.
went on mute. Try to unmute your mic, Daniel.
sorry,
There you go.
can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we got it.
I think I did a double tap there.
Cool.
Anyway, so on the first area, I mean, the areas that you're gonna work on your last year, I've been living in San Jose for the last 20 years, and the moment I got here, I realized that Caltrans is not being fair with their budget. So why did it take so long for you guys to realize in the mayor office? I mean, it's obvious that Caltrans and we've been in forums with mayors and stuff. It's just obvious that they just don't clean San Jose the way they clean Atherton, Palo Alto, etc. So
Yeah.
why it took so long?
Yeah. So first, I can tell you, I had a very heated argument with a Caltrans director in 2015 when I first came into office about this very issue. We urged them to show their numbers. They showed the numbers. We showed them why we were still being underserved. They committed at that time they would fix the budget to ensure we were getting a proper allocation. Lo and behold, they didn't do that very well. So here's the problem. First, we don't control the state budget. Secondly, we don't even have transparency into how we're spending the numbers. We have to literally raise hell, and I have to call the governor's office and go directly to the director of transportation to get these numbers. Third, the unique problems that they have here is this. It's in state law that they can't pay a maintenance worker more in San Jose than they pay in Fresno, even though we know it costs a heck of a lot more to live in San Jose than it does in Fresno. So here's the result. They say they spend the same amount everywhere based on per capita, whatever they say they spend, but they have a whole bunch of vacancies in Santa Clara County because nobody can afford to actually live here if they work on a Caltrans crew because they're getting paid so little.
Got it.
And so we had huge problems getting them to even fill these vacancies. And that's why we literally had to do their hiring for them, try to get unhoused people through our San Jose Bridge program to go apply to go work for Caltrans, which we've been doing. So we're trying to solve the problem for them because they got this rigid sclerotic bureaucracy and can't figure out how to pay people more in high cost areas. Don't get me started. The other reason, I just say this, the other reason why our freeways don't look like they do in Atherton has a lot to do with the difference between big cities and Atherton, right? First of all, Atherton doesn't have a high concentration of people, period, right? It's very sparse. And secondly, they don't have a high concentration of unhoused people who might be creating, obviously, trash on roadways. And we know there's obviously an impact of that. Obviously, when people live outside, all people create trash. I create trash. I just have somebody pick it up every week. Unhoused people create trash. It's out on the street. That's why we have Cash for Trash and these other programs. So we're never going to have the beautiful freeway that Atherton does, but we need to have a much better looking freeway, and that's what I'm pushing for.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. Pastor John?
Yes, thank you. My question is really about homelessness. I know you had already talked about that. I appreciate your interest and concern. I know as a part of the community, I see homeless people almost every day on the church property. I talk with them. Homelessness really is more than just, you can't really call people homeless. I think you need to understand whether this, are you talking to working poor? Are you talking to somebody who's got a drug addiction or alcohol addiction and so on? So there's all different categories of homeless, as I would see.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned about people who have mental health issues. You mentioned about housing and so on and working with the DA, but is there any plan or any system right now to help people who have their mental health issues to get treatment and ongoing support to get them through that in their life?
Yeah, really important question. So in the state of California, counties have the exclusive responsibility for health, including hospitals, including public health, pandemics, including mental health, including drug treatment. That's what counties do. There are some exceptions like the city and county of San Francisco. They're one and the same, the city and county, so they do it all. But here, obviously, rely on the county. we would love to see much more mental health outreach from the county. In their defense, it is very difficult for them to hire mental health workers right now. There's a very small labor pool there that is very stretched, and they have a hard time hiring and keeping those folks. But nonetheless, we would love to see them do more. We'd love to see them provide treatment, for example, at the quick build apartment communities that we've been building. We'd love to see drug treatment in those facilities. But right now the city's paying for all of that. And it's gotten so challenging. We're even paying for mental health workers, even though we never have before in our city's history, paying for mental health workers to accompany our housing teams when they're doing housing outreach. So, we're trying to step into the breach, but the breach is fundamentally one that needs to be filled by the state and the county. Now, there are new dollars out there, and we're urging the county to be very aggressive in trying to get them both for capital construction of mental health facilities, particularly drug treatment, as well as for services. The dramatic change at the state level in a program called, what's now called CalAIM, is going to be very, very important. And this is really important to hold the county's feet to the fire on this, to take advantage of the CalAIM program, which is now going to provide much more holistic services to unhoused residents and low-income residents to get mental health and drug treatment that they critically need, rather than having a lot of silos for services that existed prior to CalAIM. They just got federal approval for that now at the state level. So it's coming down to all the counties and county health plans. And we are hopeful that is going to be aggressively implemented. And I hope we're going to start to see some improvements as a result of that push at the state level. Last thing I think I'd say on this is this. An awful lot of the behavior you see out there that I think we commonly associate with psychosis, mental health issues, has a very large majority of it has a common root. I said methamphetamine before, and I mean methamphetamine. There's a lot of discussion around general needs of mental health and all kinds of other drug issues around fentanyl, for example. And there's no question that fentanyl gets all the media, all the opiates get a lot of media attention. What is driving street crime disproportionately, overwhelmingly in our city, and was driving an enormous amount of what we perceive to be mental health problems and psychoses that we're seeing out on the street, is methamphetamine use and long-term methamphetamine use. There's no pharmacological treatment for methamphetamine. It has to be through behavioral treatment, which means you need inpatient facilities. You got to get people off the street, because you're not going to treat somebody with a methamphetamine addiction while they're living under a bridge. They're not going to get better. You got to get them in-house, which means you either need supportive housing where you can get the treatment in the housing, or you need an inpatient facility. In some cases, in many cases, you need a judge's order to get them there, which really comes back to my original frustration around getting folks booked in jail. You got to have them in front of a judge. A judge can say thou shalt, or they're not going to get the treatment. And that's really what I'm pushing hard on right now.
Thank you. If I could just make one more comment. I appreciate what you've said. I know as a church, we've kind of toyed with the idea of even using part of the property we have to put up maybe like a 3 or 4 story facility for mental health services that would include long-term stay there to try and get at this issue, because I don't know a lot about what's needed in mental health, but I know that people will talk to me and I know they'll talk to others too. They do need that help. And I have talked to the county about doing something like this without much success at this point. But
Pastor John, you just made my day. Could you just remind me of the congregation that you serve?
It's Grace Church of Evergreen.
Grace of Evergreen. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to be back in touch with you, because here's, first, we don't expect you to be experts in mental health. I'm not either. But I just had a lengthy conversation last week with the Secretary of Health and Human Services here in the state, Dr. Mark Galley. He said, look, just bring us a site. They have state money, in last year's budget for capital construction, and they have this operating funding through CalAIM. And we would love to partner with you. We'll bring the money, we'll bring the resources. We'd love to have a site and as you mentioned, a caring community. Faith-based communities can be so essentially helpful in this kind of space. And so thank you for your willingness to even consider and explore this. We're going to be back in touch with you very soon. If you wouldn't mind, I'm going to send you here. I'm going to give you my Gmail account right here. If you could send me an email, we will reach out. And anyone else who wants to
Okay.
send me an email can certainly do so. Just be aware that Spotlight will absolutely be interested in everything you write. It'll be subject to Public Record Act requests. And we produce thousands of these emails, it seems, on a monthly basis to one publication.
So as an aside there, this organization honors volunteers each year for their service to the community in memory of Carol Ashman, who was one of the founding members here. And John was the recipient this year for all the good stuff that he does for our community. And
thank you,
I would
Pastor John.
expect nothing less than what he just offered you from him. Thank you very much, John.
We would love to
Great
partner with you.
decision.
Thank you, Pastor John.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear that. It's really exciting to know.
Okay, Janet.
Well, thank you. I too am like really excited to hear about the what you just talked about. I remember the methadone programs that were had in like the 70s and 80s, and they worked. I mean, people went through them. Some people had to go through it maybe a few times, but you know, they worked, and then people were back out and you know, active members and good members of the community. So I'm really happy to hear that there's money to be had, and that there's some programs that, and we're all kind of in agreement that there's programs that we can put together again. I don't know what happened to those, or if we just had so much more, you know, need at this point, but I think that's great. And I just wanted to point out too, Mayor, that this community, the Evergreen community, is really a wonderful community of people that care. We really care. And one of the persons who you just spoke to, Daniel De La Rosa, about, you know, trash and litter and garbage and homeless and all that, is one of our litter pickup warriors.
Thank you,
And
Daniel. Thank you for
always
being
out there
champion.
helping us.
Yes.
Anytime.
And there was somebody, Captain Trayer, our SJPD Captain Trayer.
Yeah, he's a good captain. Yep.
Above and beyond anyone that we've had in the recent years. So I just wanted to give kudos. Not sure if that was what I was supposed to do, but thank you.
Well, no, thank you. And you're right. Methadone is a good solution for opiate addiction. And the challenge is, you know, we're dealing with different drugs now overwhelmingly. And so we need to find some different solutions. But thank you for that, Jan.
Robert.
Sam, I want to thank you for your sense of urgency and the execution in defeating Measure B, the Evergreen Initiative in 2018.
Oh, thank you for what you did to round up the troops and get us to all fight together. That was great.
You're standing up on this when many people thought that we were going to lose, was really, really something that created an all San Jose effort to defeat it. Now we're post Measure B and we're post Evergreen East Hills Development Policy, but we still have 800 acres that are underutilized or vacant from Story Road to Southeast Evergreen. And we don't have a clear path towards community engagement in terms of planning for our future, a la a Dave Cortese type committee. You're the last council member that has a history. And you know the package that Dave brought to the council with the development, with the community benefits. If the 40-foot height limit is raised at Eastridge, we have a tremendous opportunity for value capture and community benefits, to get more affordable housing than we might get by the standard requirement. But we're going to need some help from the policymakers in getting a community engagement process going. We had asked for a stakeholder group during the general plan task force, and we couldn't get any traction at City Hall or with the planning department, but I think it still remains. Right now, all we have is getting a postcard 10 days before a community meeting.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of concern about development taking a long time, but I want you to really understand that we have developments in Evergreen where there's a discussion at City Hall about the planning of the development for several years before there's even any community engagement. So there's a lot of discussion about neighbors slowing things down, but we know the private markets work faster than city planning.
Right.
And it would seem better, as we're dealing with the enormity of the development of these 800 acres, that we have a seat at the table from the get-go. You got a short time left, but can you do anything to help us out?
Hey, Robert, can I just probe a little? You said there are projects in the Evergreen area that have been talked about for many years before any community engagement. Can you give me some ideas?
Sure. I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but for at least 2 years, there's been discussions at City Hall on the Sears site, which is part of the Eastridge site, which conceivably could be an urban village.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to get information on that, but have been unable to. With the Evergreen Valley College site, you know, they were working for several years before they bothered to engage with us. On the temple at Ruby Norwood that you may know about, the Temple Foundation designed the plans they wanted before they bothered to engage with the community. And part of the engagement that we've had with them so far is trying to get a right-sized building. But when you have a situation where you have a development process where plans are made and discussed for a couple years before you bring in the community, you kind of know that you got a high potential for a lot of work still to occur.
Yeah.
And we want to try to prevent that. I personally have no interest in hanging anything up, but we have a system where there's a lot of discussions and a lot of work, and plans are designed before the community is even brought into the process.
Okay. So let me, I'm happy to talk with Councilmember Arenas about doing some community outreach, particularly on those, you mentioned the Sears site, since that's, I guess, the one under consideration. I can tell you, I have not been involved in any conversations about sort of redevelopment of an urban village there. I've just assumed that an awful lot of that conversation would need to wait until we could see the light more clearly at the end of the tunnel for whatever happens with the airport, with Reed Hillview. So I just assumed naturally there wasn't going to be a lot of development until something changed. But I'm happy to try to encourage some outreach, particularly about that site. Let me, Robert, like I know you're very savvy about land use issues, and I appreciate your deep engagement. Let me share my full disclosure, my hesitation about saying, yeah, we're going to launch into a full-blown community engagement process around Evergreen development. My concerns are these. First, our planning department is totally overwhelmed and understaffed. And it's gotten really bad during the pandemic, because we actually had at one point many planners who were actually sick and out. And we're having a hard time right now retaining, as a fair number of folks are moving out of the area in that department for whatever reason. So we know that's the reality that an awful lot of folks are facing the pandemic. So we just don't have bandwidth right now, planning department, to take on major planning efforts. We just are getting the general plan update now resolved, which was a heavy lift for them. Secondly, I'm not eager to actually start a big planning process that would incorporate, for example, sites I think about like the old golf course, because I frankly have very serious concerns about how that could invite some really bad development if we start lifting we start lifting some constraints right now and start conversations. Before you know it, I think we both could see something neither one of us like. And third, that hasn't been a focus area. Evergreen has not been a big focus area development in our city for a variety of reasons, but one of them is that, I think we've recognized and heard pretty clearly from the community. The community is not super receptive to high density development in Evergreen. And so we've been, trying to encourage developers to be downtown and in West San Jose and Santana Row and North San Jose and all those areas where we know we have growth capacity, we have transit infrastructure, we have the places where we want to build. So for us to be spending an enormous amount of resources in a part of a city where there's not either an enormous amount of development interest or a lot of appetite in the community for a lot of development is a suboptimal use of very scarce resources right now planning. Now, what you said though about the Sears site certainly piqued my interest because that has me thinking, hey, if there's something brewing here, then let's all show the cards and engage the community on this. And it sounds like you're hearing there is something brewing.
I appreciate your candor.
Yeah, that's the key. It's not, we're not advocating bringing everything to a screeching halt. We're not advocating, devote a bunch of scarce resources to Evergreen. We just would like transparency in the processes so that we don't have to have special contacts to find out what's going on, in the background, just so we can stay appraised of what's happening and make sure that we get an entree into the process before it gets too far down the road. That's all.
Yeah, fair point.
Yeah.
And Robert, if there are other sites like that, let me know. I mean, obviously, if there's something else brewing.
Well, I want you to know that Kelly Klein, your land use manager, has been fantastic. She actually came to our Evergreen College meeting on a Saturday. Yeah, she's great. Yeah, very fortunate to have her.
So I'm going to ask a question just because it's been near and dear to my heart for quite some time, and I haven't heard much about it lately. And I assume the stock market prior to January had helped us out some. But what's the status of our pension situation now regarding unfunded liabilities and whatnot?
Yeah, great question. Well, good news and bad news. I'll start with the bad news. Not a lot is changed. So this is still a very large burden on all of us. The unfunded liability has been reduced. That's good news. It's heading in the right direction, though very, very large. I couldn't give you the latest number because I think the last report came out for the last fiscal year. It's on the order of $3.5 billion. But the good news is, for the first time in anyone's memory, and certainly in the last couple of decades, we're now seeing the slope of the line come down as we look into the future. So with solid actuarial assumptions, we can say with discount rates that are now much lower and so forth, we can say that we're seeing the line coming down quite a bit over the next 5 years, assuming those assumptions are met. Now, I think we both see what's going on with the market today, and it could get a whole lot worse, right? So those assumptions may not get met, and all my dreams of seeing that line continue to drop could go away. But here's the really the thing that gives me hope, which is the one thing we did in 2016 that was super valuable is that we shut down the retiree healthcare plan, and for any new employees. So we no longer have a new ongoing liability for healthcare, and that was half of the burden at the time that we were starting this effort. And so that sure, the burden is diminishing, and that's really good news, because that enables us obviously to focus our resources on the pension obligation, and that's why we were starting to really see the shrinking in the numbers.
Well, good. That's good to hear. Thanks. Do we have other questions from the audience? All right. So I would ask Sam for you to tell Jessica I said hi. And
I will.
Thank her for sharing you with us for these past 7 years so far, soon to be 8. And now you can leave and go return her phone call. And thank you very much for spending the time with us, Sam.
Hey, thanks. It was a pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone, for your deep engagement. It's great to see you all again.
Talk to you later. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye now.
All right. Did I miss any of the elected officials that were lurking when I was going through that? I didn't see any other than Derek, who didn't respond. All right. I'll open it up for public comments if anybody wants to chime in for a minute or two. With announcements or comments or whatever. Now's your time. And it looks like we are done. So thank you all very much. We will let you know. We'll let you know about the upcoming meeting in March and April at the beginning of next week. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, Janet, for
Thank
running
you.
the show.
Good night.
Hey, Derek, the meeting just ended.
Yeah, I bet it did. I was in another meeting, the San Jose COVID Recovery Task Force. We meet the second Tuesday. I mean second Thursday of the month. But I was listening. I had my phone here, and then, so I was trying to be in both meetings, but my battery ran out. But I did hear some of Sam and some of Robert also.
Cool.
So, yeah,
Good.
yeah.
We
But
have
yeah, you can
Go
fill
ahead.
me in on Saturday. We have a steering committee meeting, right?
Yeah, steering committee meeting, and right now I'm trying to figure out how to copy the chat to the file and make
Oh.
sure that the recording got recorded and goes to the right place. But
I can
yeah,
imagine.
Pat called on you to see if there was anything, an update on the school district. But yeah, we figured that you're probably in another meeting. But it was a good meeting. Lots of stuff going on.
Good. All right, Janet. Thank you. I'll see you Saturday then.
See you Saturday.
All
Bye.
right, bye now.
Okay, so how?
Yes, that's what happens when you spend a lot of time bent over. You gotta use the brain.